So you're shipping goods in Latin America, and you've probably found yourself asking the question, why isn't rail a simpler option? Today, we're going to dig into the complex reality of the region's freight railway network and give you the clear, straightforward answers you've been looking for.
Right, so you're thinking about shipping by rail. It makes perfect sense. I mean, in most parts of the world, it's the absolute backbone of logistics. But when we're talking about Latin America, well, let's just say the answer is a little more complicated than you might think. You're probably picturing this huge, interconnected web of tracks, kind of like what you see in North America or Europe, right? A massive continental grid where you could just pop a container on a train in Brazil and have it show up in Colombia, no problem. It's a totally reasonable assumption.
Yeah, but that picture, it couldn't be further from the truth. The thing is, the Latin American rail network was built with a completely different goal in mind. And that history creates a really unique set of challenges and, some opportunities for shippers today.
Okay, so first up, let's talk about a fragmented reality. Because to make the right shipping decisions, you've got to understand the true nature of the network itself. And this is really the key word here, fragmentation. See, the railways here were never, ever designed to connect the entire continent. Instead, they were built as these isolated corridors, usually for one very specific purpose, to get natural resources from deep inland out to a port. That's it.
So what does that mean for you, the shipper? Well, it has some pretty big consequences. If you're moving bulk stuff, we're talking minerals or soybeans, to a port for export, the network is fantastic. But for containerized or mixed cargo, not so great. And if you want to ship across borders, you're going to face some huge hurdles because each country's system is basically its own little island.
All right, so what does this fragmentation actually look like on the ground? Let's zoom in on the two biggest players in the region, Brazil and Mexico. Their systems really highlight this whole dynamic perfectly. So you've got Brazil. Its rail network is an absolute beast for exports. I mean, it's essential for their massive mining industry. But if you want to move things around inside the country, it's a nightmare. You've got different track gauges, disconnected lines. It's a mess. Then you have Mexico, which has this efficient, privatized system that's brilliantly connected to the U.S. But if your cargo isn't headed north, its usefulness drops off fast. Okay, so moving things north-south or just within a country is tricky. But what about east to west? What about crossing the continent, say from the Atlantic to the Pacific? Well, this is where we run into one of the biggest roadblocks in global logistics. Literally. And honestly, this quote says it all. The Andes Mountains are just immense. The terrain is brutal, there are seismic risks. Building railways across that is unbelievably difficult and expensive. It's the number one reason a true coast-to-coast railway has pretty much always been just a dream.
So what are the actual options? The reality is pretty slim. You've got the Belgrano corridor, which connects Argentina and Chile, but it's a mix of rail and road, not a pure train route. There are these huge, ambitious plans to link Brazil and Peru, but they're mostly just that, plans. And yeah, the Panama Canal Railway is super efficient, but that's in Central America. It doesn't really help you move things across the South American continent itself.
Okay, so with that dose of reality, how in the world do you make the right call as a shipper? Let's break it all down into a practical guide. So, where does all the other stuff go? The general cargo. Well, this number, it says a lot. In many parts of Latin America, over 70% of all cargo moves by truck. For most goods, especially anything that's time-sensitive or mixed, the roads are just king. Decades of investment went into highways, giving trucks way more flexibility and reach. Look, it really boils down to this simple fact. Rail is your absolute go-to for heavy, bulk commodities heading to a port over a long distance. It is incredibly cost-effective for that one specific job. But for pretty much everything else, general cargo, shipments that need flexible routes, last-minute deliveries, road transport is almost always going to be the more practical choice, even with its own headaches like traffic and higher costs. All right, let's put it all together. This is the final verdict for you. Are you moving bulk commodities to a port? Yes, absolutely, you should be looking at rail. But for anything else, containers, mixed cargo, shipments crossing the continent, or even just crossing a border, you are facing some serious limitations. The truth is, another mode of transport is probably going to serve you better. So here's the bottom line. The one thing you really need to remember. Rail in Latin America is a specialist's tool. It is not a general-purpose network.
It does one job, moving bulk to ports, and it does that one job exceptionally well. For everything else, you got to look at your other options.
And that, of course, leaves us with the big question for the future. With all this talk of new investments and huge infrastructure projects, will this fragmented map finally become the connected network that shippers have been waiting for? It's something we'll all be watching. For now, only time will tell. Thanks for joining me.